Hello, this is our first live. Then please excuse anything that we did trying and testing, but you know something interesting? Trying and testing is one of the skills that we need for entrepreneurs. Then as we are also entrepreneurs, we are here trying and testing how to start this conversation. Today, we will be talking about a fundamental topic, ethics as a fundamental value in business, and we have two wonderful participants. This will be a conversation between Tandon, they will introduce themselves in seconds, and Renata Amaya. One is located in Silicon Valley, and the other one is in Colombia. They have two amazing perspectives, and we want to invite you to participate, ask questions, and welcome. Please, Dev, it is great meeting you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And Renata. Hi, Renata.
Hello, how are you guys?
Great, thank you. I will tell you, today we started the first session for the incubator, and the session went great. The people is very happy with it, but mentors and we as founders, the people are even happier than anybody else here. Then thank you for joining us, and the stage is yours. Please feel free to introduce yourself, and then Renata.
Sure, Renata, you want to go first?
Okay.
No, let's go you, because you are in Silicon Valley, so we have to take the best of you, and then sure. I can talk to them easily.
Sure. So thanks so much for the kind introduction, and Rosario, thanks so much for having us. It's a great honor to be here today to talk about, and this is such an important topic of ethics as a fundamental value in business. So, a little bit about me. I have about 20 years of experience in traditional business. I graduated in 2000 with a degree in computer science, and then I went and worked at McKinsey, the global management consulting firm, for a couple of years. And then after that, I left and I started my own consulting and software business that I ran for almost 16, 17 years. So nearly 20 years of experience in traditional business. And so I was in this sort of a conventional world on one track, and then simultaneous to that, I also had a personal journey that I was on that included everything of really a journey of self-improvement and self-realization that included everything from meditation to yoga to therapy to retreats and body work and you name it, all kinds of self-healing modalities that I explored. And what happened was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, these two tracks that I was on kind of came together. And I sort of woke up and looked around, and in the business environment that I'd been in the last 20 years, I just kind of was shocked and said, what are we doing here? What is going on here? We have record levels of employee disengagement in the world. We have enormous problems facing humanity, from climate change to wealth inequality and everything in between. Racial injustice we're seeing around the world. And in many cases, business is either the root cause of these challenges, or if it's not the root cause, then it's a massive contributor to it. And so when these worlds came together, I started a movement called the Oboe movement, which we'll talk about today, which is really intended to transform how we approach work as a society and how we do business as a society. So I can talk about that more in a moment, but that's a little bit about me and my history, my background that brings me here today.
Okay, now is my turn, I think. I am a lawyer and anthropologist. I have also about 20 years of experience, but not in the real world, but in the academic world. I've been teaching ethics for already more than 12 years for lawyers. And I work at the Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá, Colombia, and I am part of the Center of Applied Ethics of the university, and I got a degree. It's not a formal degree, but a degree as a teacher who teaches ethics. And in addition to that, I teach a class in orality and writing, And also I teach labor law. And I did my master's in New York in a university, which is a lovely place called New School for Social Research. And I did my PhD at the Universidad Nacional de Colombia. And this is so nice to be here and to try to explain how I see the ethics and what's the relations between ethics and the real world. And so it's a pleasure to be here with Rosario and with Deb and with all of you.
Well, just in order to let you take this conversation forward, I just want to say you two are opening a very important moment for us because we want to we want this incubator to be the incubator for Hispanic business owners who are building a new type of business. What means that you will set up the stage for the 8 weeks that we are studying. And it is an honor to have you here. Please feel free. I will be in the back, but here with you. Thank you.
Great. So you want to start, Deb?
Yeah, maybe a good place to begin is to just explain, right, what my kind of project is and how it relates, I think, to ethics, and then we can take it, any direction that you or the others want to go. So, the simple way to describe what the Oboe movement is a movement to transform how we as a society do business, right? So changing the focus of business. Right now, the focus of business is money, right? So changing the focus of the primary objective of business from money to complete fulfillment of the people who are involved in the business, and demonstrating that when we do that, that such a model attracts even more prosperity and money than the model that we have today. So if you think about it, right, we've been raised as a society generally to believe that if we pursue money and we achieve it, that we'll be fulfilled, right? When if you study the wisdom from around the world, right, of eons, every great philosopher who has ever existed, right, from Socrates to the Buddha, has taught us the opposite, in fact, that when we pursue fulfillment, then money and other worldly prosperity comes to us, right, through something that is known as the law of attraction. And so the idea behind this movement is, what if we change the purpose, the very objective of work, and make the objective the fulfillment of the people who are involved in the work through the work itself, right? So a good one-line description that captures the summary of the essence of what our, philosophy is if the Buddha were a CEO, how would he run the company, right? So that's a very powerful, we're here today talking about ethics in business, right? And the question that I'm posing, right, is, okay, if an enlightened person were the CEO of the company, how would that company look? And I think most of the listeners right now will take a moment to kind of place that next to what we have today, right, in our current corporate environment and who's running our current, global corporations. And I think we would agree that such a business would look quite different, right, if we had an enlightened person running it. And so that's the basic philosophy. So a couple of simple examples would be transparency. Very important concept related to ethics, right, in business. But we ask ourselves a question: if the Buddha were a CEO, would anything in the business whatsoever be hidden, right? And likely the answer is no, right? I mean, we have a crisis of trust in our businesses today, global company, literally crisis proportions. And trust is one side of the coin, the other side is transparency. And so in this model, we go past radical transparency to extreme, complete transparency of everything. And when I say transparency of everything, I mean every single thing. Like, you want to see my strategic plan? Here you go. You want to see my marketing plan? Here you go. You want to see how much I earn? Here you go. Right? So it's almost a complete. I always joke that it's like the complete opposite of how business works today, right? That might be a little bit of a jaded view, but I don't know how you feel about it.
No, I completely agree with you. I would like to start thinking a little bit about the title of this conference, like ethics is a value, a fundamental value for business. I think it's not just a value, it's like something that you cannot avoid in daily life, not just in business, but in every single topic that you have to face. Is an attitude to life. And I think I add as of what you say, the point I would like to the point to clarify is just that ethics is something that starts in you. I mean, the transformation you talk about is inside you. So
Right.
that's the beginning of everything. It's not just a speech that you give to others, like, oh, we have to be very transparent in order to make better the business and to get our fulfillment. That the whole idea of fulfillment that you place is about transforming yourself. And the beginning of all of that is the recognition of others. And I think when I start my classes of ethics at the university, the main point is that what do you think of others and how these others affect your daily life? And I think that's a point that is very complementary of what you say.
Right, right. Yeah, what our philosophy really starts, as you said, with the individual and transforming the individual, him or herself. Because once that happens, see, all of this lack of ethics, right, that we see in the world, and all of this discord, right, that we see in the world, this outer discord, as you're pointing out, is a reflection of the inner discord, right, that we all have. And so that's why your point about starting with the individual, with each of us, is so important. It cannot just be words on a page of marketing about transparency. It has to be outer transparency, inner transparency. And the way we achieve this inner transparency is by changing the objective of the work itself. When we change the objective of the work from the work product, right now today, the objective of the work is the work product. We make the objective the deepest personal growth of the worker, the kind of growth that you're talking about, deep within. And when that reconnection happens, ethics naturally happens, because you cannot treat anybody poorly, right, if you are truly connected to yourself. And that's why we make the objective of work this reconnection, this realization, right, of who I as a human being am and you as a human being are.
And there is a fake dilemma that my students usually have that is related with what you said, that is like, can we really be like good professionals in this extent, like lawyers, and being good human beings? And I told them that there is not really a dilemma. I mean, you cannot be a good anything if you are not a good person in the first place. So the point is that if you start to see what implies to be to do business in a transparent sort of way, and not just as part of the speech, as I said before, and as you also placed, I mean, the things are going to change fundamentally in every single aspect of your life, and of course in business. So the dilemma is not if I can be like good in business and then being a good human being. So the real point, sorry, Deb. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, that's a great point, right? Because so many people get confused. See, people get confused. They say either I can be a good person, or, right, that I can be in business, or I can have money, or I can be fulfilled. And the reason for this "or" is actually very important in my observations, because we as a society have been trained that it's or. You can't have both. And what I'm here to say, and what you're saying as well, is actually you can. This is not about money or fulfillment. This is about money and fulfillment. In fact, it's about money through fulfillment. When I am deeply fulfilled, right, on the inside, means I'm totally connected with myself, no disconnection here, then ethics and proper behavior, proper action, respect, transparency, all these things, they naturally flow, right? You don't even have to try. The example I give is like this. It's a little bit like, when you, let's say you're going to the grocery store, right? And you pick up 3 bags, right, at the grocery store. And then after that, you come home, you go to the gym, and you work out for a month, you build your muscles. And then the next time you go to the grocery store, instead of picking up 3 bags, you're able to pick up 5 bags, right? So that 5 bags, how did that happen? Did you do anything different? It's not like you thought, hey, I need to engage my muscle differently in my bicep and pick it. No. It just happened, right? Naturally, because you went to the gym and you were able to build those muscles. So same way, like you're saying right now, when we go inward, right, and we dip into this being and we reconnect with ourselves and we make that the objective of work, what happens is all these things, you know, the ethics and all these things naturally flow from there without even thinking. You know, we don't have to think about it. We don't have to try to be good people because we all naturally are good people. We've just forgotten that we are good people. And this exercise is an exercise in reminding, you know, can we make work, objective of work, a reminder, you know?
In addition to what you said, I think that in any case, like thinking about business related to ethics, like is a way of face life daily. So it means that the process of being good in business and not like broke this idea of being good in business on the one hand and being a good human being on the other is a constant process of reflection and of action. I mean, it's not something that you decide one day and then everything goes, but you have to behave like in terms of what you think, and it takes time. And it takes time to understand that business are successful and are sustainable on time just if you are really transparent and if you are really respecting others and everything. And besides, I think there is a challenge that in the very young business they have to face now, that is diversity. Not just diversity in terms of people, but in terms of every single thing. Like now that we are communicating, and thanks to the pandemic, we can have Dev here, and we don't have to think about cost and everything. So it's very easily now. But this idea of diversity implies that you have to have another like paradigm of what you think, of what you do, and you have to try to change all the world that we have been educated in, which is the word that Deb was mentioned before.
Right. Yeah, and what's interesting is when you do this work in the manner that we're talking about here, you know, everything is connected in our lives. So not only do you become more ethical in business, right? You become more ethical, like you said, everywhere. It's all connected. You know, there's no separation between this life and that life, right? Or when we get, essentially the process that I'm talking about is like watering the root of life. And so when you water the root of life, what happens is your activities in business become not only more ethical, they become stronger, they become more effective, they become all of the above. You know, an example I always give on this, right, that I think really kind of conveys the essence, right, of what this philosophy is let's say you're giving a presentation. I might have shared this already with you, Renata, but I'll share it with the audience. So if you're giving a presentation, right, in the conventional world, and I say, what are you doing, Renata? You might say, I'm getting on stage to give a presentation and I'm feeling a little bit nervous right now, right? We've all been there, giving presentations and, you know, to our boss in the crowd. In the Oboe philosophy, in this philosophy that I'm talking about here, what happens is if I say, Renata, what are you doing? You would say that I am working through my nervousness by giving a presentation. So we see the difference there, right? In both cases, the presentation is getting done. The conventional, regular business world case, the presentation is getting done. And in this case, but in one case, the objective is the presentation. In another case, the objective is inner peace. And so when we make the objective in this example of the work, the presentation, inner peace, what happens to the presentation? The presentation, quality, volume, efficiency, productivity, all these things go through the roof, right? And as you were saying earlier, not only does the presentation get better, that person's life, the person who is on the stage, their whole life change, their whole life gets better, because it's not like you just release, in this example, nervousness on the presentation. You release a little bit of your anxiety from the root, right? And so when anxiety and, you know, anger and depression and all these things start to disappear, start to subside, what's left is our natural ethical core. So our activities naturally, effortlessly become ethical.
If we think about what you said from a philosophical point of view, we would have to mention Kant, definitely, because Kant think about that, and it's not as far away as we think, because the categorical imperative is something that just reflect what you said. And I think that the golden rule, which is nothing but particularly what the state 2 or 3 centuries ago, Kant, is precisely what you said. I mean, like, the way of behave is the way that you would like to be treated by others. Yeah. There is nothing but that. And it comes naturally, as you said, when you really are, I mean, you don't have to think about ethics as one part of your life and about like not being ethics in another part of your life. But if you have this interiorized, I mean, the result will be the same.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening to this right now saying, well, wait a second, we live in this system of capitalism, and is this anti-capitalistic and all of that? None of that. In fact, if we take a moment to consider capitalism in general, because this is a hot topic right now, right? Capitalism, and people are talking about socialism and all these kinds of things, right? First of all, if we go back to the invention of capitalism, right? Adam Smith, the founder, the world's first economist, and you read his book, The Wealth of Nations, a lot of people don't realize that Adam Smith originally was a moral philosopher, actually, before he came up with capitalism, or when he came up with capitalism, right? So what we are experiencing today is certainly, economists will tell you, a very different flavor of what he had originally invented, right? So there is that point. But the more important point is what Renata and I are talking about is not any particular ism, right? This is not like capitalism or socialism. This is in fact compatible with all of the isms because it's beneath the isms. This is about a new way of being at work. You're going on the inside and kind of, in some ways reinventing yourself, but in some ways not reinventing yourself. You're going back to what you originally were.
With what you said, I thought in an anecdote that happened to me like 10 years ago. One friend of mine who is working on business and probably would take to be here, he must be here. And he said to me, "Are you successful?" And I asked him, "What do you mean by successful? I mean, how many people do you have? How many people you give orders to?" And I was like, "Nobody, because I'm teaching, so I don't think that I am giving orders to my students, and with the people who I work with, I don't think there is like a hierarchical relationship, nothing like that." So I told him, "Well, I think I have nobody in my direction." So he said, "So you are not successful." And I have to think a lot about that, and I was like, okay, if successful, taking your term, like if fulfillment means to have hundreds of people to give orders to, probably, so just very few people is gonna be successful. But if you think that you are like what you said, what you do is taken as a model of whatever business you are doing, probably you are successful now. And it's something that you have to reinvent and recreate with the new circumstances.
That's exactly right. This kind of almost definition of what success is. And in some ways, I can offer a thought here where we don't even have to redefine it necessarily. We just have to rethink how our orientation to success. This is actually a good topic to discuss here, where we have, so many of us associate success with something in the material world, right? Materially, like I made a lot of money, or I built a big business, or to your point, I have so many people who are reporting to me, right? That's all in the material world, okay? But here's the thing: if we just take a moment to consider, okay? Even though we think we want a material thing, so let's use a really simple example. Let's say I want a new car. I want a Ferrari, okay? People think they want the Ferrari, when in reality, if you just take a moment to consider, it's not the Ferrari that you're after, okay? It's the experience that comes along with the Ferrari, right, that you are after. And that's a really important point. It's not the physical thing, it's the experience of the physical thing. And once we realize that, that's kind of step one. Then the question is, okay, if it's the experience of the thing that I'm after, can I create that experience, right? Regardless of whether or not the external thing, in this example, the Ferrari, is there. And the answer to that creation of the experience is also yes. And there are plenty of philosophers from around the world who have not only said this, have demonstrated it themselves. And so when that happens, right, that's a major shift, because then the game becomes, okay, how can I create this experience, right, regardless of whether the externality is there, okay, while still pursuing the externality, while still, in this example, pursuing the Ferrari or pursuing the big business or pursuing the direct reports. And what happens is, when we do that, when we have this ability to cultivate this experience, regardless of whether or not anything is happening externally, our pursuit of the external becomes stronger. It becomes more productive. It becomes more joyous, more peaceful. It becomes more ethical. It becomes all of it, like, because we're watering the root of life. We're cultivating and culturing the mind to be able to experience something, right, regardless of what is happening outside.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I will add that there is something that is very important here, is that you cannot face business or face any part of your life thinking that you are going to change the others. You have to start by changing yourself, and right. in the terms that you do that, probably you are going to help others to be like you. I mean, as a model, I think, as a pattern of behavior or whatever you want to show. And in addition to that, I mean, I distrust a lot when someone thinks or talks with moral superiority, because I think this is something that is not real. I just finished a book here about the violence story here in Colombia, which is called Líbranos del Bien. I mean, in English must be like something that freed us from good, and it's like a perspective about how similar are from the every single illegal groups. I mean, there is not really like a big difference between them in one term. Is that all of them are looking for the good, and they think that they have the good in their hands. So that's what I mean about moral superiority. And I think what you should do is like try to change yourself, try to do the best you can for the others and for the business you are facing on, and try to be very coherent between the values and principles that you give as standards, and then behave like you are supposed to do. Of course, Dev is pointing something, I mean, like a very, very high level, because when you try to link like theoretical things with business things and with yoga and with all of this, I mean, it's because you already started like a change in the terms of approach the world. And that's maybe the most challenging thing. I don't know if we missed Deb or we missed everyone.
There is a connection issue, but here we are. He is in the chat.
Good.
And
excellent. That's great. And I don't know if we have some questions or some comments that we can share.
Yes, we have some questions from the people. Then let me come to them. Let me go back. And Hugo Fernando Molina, he's asking if there is a cultural issue around the definition of hi Deb. Hi Deb. Here we are.
Hi Deb. We are starting with the questions. We just have one from Hugo Fernando Molina, which I think is good for us to answer. So, do you see it here in the board?
Oh yeah. Okay. So are you answering this one?
No. Start you, and because we missed you a couple of minutes, so you can start, and then I complement the answer.
So do you think that ethical culture depends on society, religion, or other cultural aspects? Who are more ethical? North Americans, Latinos, Europeans, Asians, Africans, etc. So,
that's a good one.
Yeah. It's a good question. So these are obviously, if you're asking me my opinion, I don't think that it depends on society, religion, or other cultural aspects. I think it depends on the individual. Each individual is at a different point on their journey of suffering, really. Because whenever we do anything unethical within, if I mistreat Renata, first and foremost, I'm actually harming myself. And so I'm suffering, right, in that case. And so I think it really comes down to each and every individual, which, you can have people who are in certain societies that are, much more advanced and much more, kind of further along the path. And then you could have people in that exact same society who are, take America right now, right? There's a huge spectrum of what's going on in the country, level of awakening, I would call it, in the country here. And then in terms of, different cultures, who are the most, again, for me, it all comes down to individuals. You could take the most ethical culture or country on earth, and I guarantee you will find people in there who are, right? Who
good
are,
and bad.
Yeah, exactly. And so really this is about individuals doing, Renata mentioned earlier, it's about being the change that you want to see in the world, right? Gandhi gave us this most amazing quote, right? He said, he didn't say, go get other people to change, go get other countries and societies to change. He said, like Renata said, first and foremost, it begins here. And once I uncover the light a little bit more that is within me, so to speak, right? It's impossible not to share that light with others.
And I didn't know if I told you that I also study anthropology, so I love this question because I think that we are a mixture of everything. And it's so good to have these scenarios for Latin Americans from different perspectives from around the continent and around everywhere, because I think that we are a mixture of our culture, our family, and our country, and our experiences. So this is impossible to talk about Colombians are more unethical than the rest of the world because of their history of drugs or whatever, or Americans now with this president, oh my God, whatever. But the point is that it depends on what you really want to change and what you really want to sell in the terms of business, not just about something that you want to sell in a speech or something like that. But also, it started with yourself. And it doesn't mean that you have to be the most ethical person since the day you're born, because that's impossible. The point is that you develop a behavior, and in each age, you have to try to be a better person and a better man or women of business. There is another question there. With the digital transformation, principles and values are being left in second place. What could be a good practice to preserve the ethics present in entrepreneurship? Deb, go ahead. I think Deb is frozen, right? Yeah. We don't listen to you. The microphone.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
Here,
Yeah.
I was trying to unfreeze him and be present at the same time. Well, let me. I don't know if you have an answer here, Renata. Maybe around digital transformation and how the human being, we can keep the human being at the center of the technology, not as the instrument. It's not how we are replacing humans by machines. It's not how we are replacing the interaction of humans with the technology, but how we are using the technology to improve the experience of human connections.
Yeah, and in addition, what you said, Rosario, I think that we can use, even if it sounds really, really like theoretical, I think never is enough of this. That you always have to think that if the ends justify the medios, how do you say medios?
The
The tools.
the
Let's
tools.
say the tools.
For
So
me.
I don't think that you can exactly, if you stop to have human beings as the center of the issue, probably you confuse the ends with the tools that you use. And in addition to that, Javier, is very interesting what you said, that the digital transformation left in second place values, because I think it's not true. Yeah, my experience, of course, not since the core of business, but since the core of academy. I mean, I can tell you that I feel since the pandemic started and we were forced to use digital transformation as our reality of every single day, my students are more empathical, and we are also more empathical because we understand that, I mean, that difficulty like we are facing now with the whatever is happening with the signal of debt and things like that is not an issue that can disturb what we are talking about. It's something that just happens, and we are more like empathical. Everything is like, you have to be more flexible, and you have to face reality in another sort of way, with all the differences and all the diversity that it implies. I don't know, Dev, if you read the question, because I think it's a good one as well.
I did, yeah. Sorry about that. Even though I'm in Silicon Valley, I mean,
It
it's like,
doesn't really matters. Don't worry, because it's the daily life.
yeah, but you're right. Actually, Renata made a really good point about, these things will happen. Life will have its vicissitudes, right, that it throws at us, but can we remain equanimous, right, is the way that I would describe it. That's the goal here, that, hey, these technology issues are going to happen, and, but it's, here we are, right? We're still here. Take a deep breath.
I'm here to support.
Awesome.
That's
Victoria.
true. And it's not really the issue that, hold on, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, yeah. So I was going to say on this question, right? So with the digital transformation principles and values are being left in second place. So what's the best way in terms of practice to preserve it? My answer is actually very simple, and that is for you yourself to make the choice to put it in first place, right? Like we said earlier, if other people are placing it in second place, remember, that's what's leading to all of what we're seeing right now in the world. I mean, really pick all of any major challenge that we see as a society, it's coming from a lack of the deepest level of principles and values, right? And so this is about being that change. Now, you could say, well, okay, that sounds great, but that's really hard, right? I mean, when the world isn't operating that way, how do I do that? So let's just take a moment, right, to consider this. If we had businesses that were created on the principles that I talked about earlier, these what we call the Oboe movement principles, which is like, if an enlightened person were the CEO, how would he run the company with complete transparency and all these sorts of things, equity for all, right? Basically, there's a model that we have, for instance, where the owner doesn't even have, or the founder doesn't even have any equity, right? Give all the equity to other people. Crazy concepts like that. Operating in that way, in a extreme high values, high principles way, think of the marketing that will bring your business, the marketing abilities you'll have. And marketing sometimes is like, a 4-letter word, and it's a bad thing. Marketing is not a dirty word at all, as long as operations are lined up with marketing. So if you created a business that had this extreme level of implementation of sterling values and sterling principles, like I'm talking about here, that would be like the exact opposite of every business that anybody has ever heard of today, because business doesn't work that way typically. And so you could utilize that, much like companies, there was a famous story of a company called Buffer a few years ago here in Silicon Valley. They buffered your social media posts. You could go in and plan your social media posts, for Monday this one, Tuesday that one, Wednesday that one. Really simple concept, but what made them unique was one thing. They had complete transparency around all compensation in the business. Okay, so you could go to, anybody on earth could go to a Google spreadsheet and see exactly what the CEO, CFO, and everybody in the business down to the lowest, level people or the entry level people were earning in terms of equity and compensation. And so that one thing they did gave them such powerful marketing, because they started sharing this with the world, and people were like, who is this company? What do they do? That's really crazy. And they go and they read about it, and it's like, oh, and by the way, they do social media buffering. They buffer. That seems like a useful product. Maybe I'll sign up for that, right? So this is how it goes, right? When we have powerful marketing that actually lines up with operations.
Great. I saw a comment, but okay, there it is. Thanks for all the information. What would you say is the difference, if any, among honesty, integrity, and ethics? Do you think being ethical implies being honest and also have integrity? Well, let me start with this one. I think there is not a difference. I mean, there is a difference in terms of the concepts and definitions, but I think that it's impossible to have integrity and to be ethics if we are not honest. I mean by this that there is it's like a conjunction of lots of things that cannot be just one or two or three, but have to be all related to each other, to each other, in order to make you an ethical person.
Yeah. So I think can we, Rosario, are we able to flash the question? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, I think that the difference is between is a little bit like saying, what's the difference between peace and love, right? And joy. I mean, are there differences? Yeah, there are differences between peace and love and joy. But the reality is that when we approach work in the manner that Renata and I are talking about, where we make the overarching objective to develop this deepest level of peace and joy and fulfillment and so on, then the natural byproduct, the natural thing that comes from that is honesty, is integrity, is ethics. They all describe slightly different things in this world that we live in, right? This material world, but the source that they're coming from, right, is the same. And so what we're talking about here is getting back to that source and saying, that's why I'm doing this work, is for me to get more deeply, powerful deep within myself, so that I don't even have to think about honesty and integrity and ethics and all these things, because it's like my lifting the grocery bags analogy. It just happens. You don't have, we want to make it, I have a teacher who says that the objective is to do less and accomplish more. That's what we all want, right? We all want to do less and accomplish more, right? And eventually what happens is you do nothing and accomplish everything. That's what the great, masters, meditation teachers and so forth say. But what does it mean to do less? It means to be more, right? Do less, you be more. So
there is something I would like to add to the last comment as well, that for some theorics, like ethics is the space, the scenario to think about integrity, honesty, etc. But I think, what we are doing is to creating a space of ethics, and to do that, even with the limitations in terms of technology and the limitations in terms of language and whatever. The point is that we are all here for a reason, and the reason is that we think that this is important and that matters in terms of business. So that's why doesn't matter if you start with the integrity idea or with the honesty idea or with the transparency idea, but the point is that you are trying to make of your business something that is worthy for the others. So that's important as well. And there is another one, yeah. This is your turn. Go ahead, Deb.
Well, I'll give a little bit of a my kids always joke around that my answers are always like so deep, but how to develop successful digital businesses with frequent payment and use from customers without creating dependence on the customers, on the user. So dependence and reliance, how do we so the best way to not be reliant on someone else is to become fully reliant on yourself. The only reason that this reliance on other people exists is because we ourselves have not learned to be able to rely on ourselves, you know, because we ourselves are so unreliable to ourselves. You know, think about when you close your eyes, the amount of mental chatter and self-criticality, right, and lack of self-love that each and every one of us in the whole world, right, suffers with right now. I mean, that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. So the best way to do all of these things that we are talking about is to develop that internal self-reliance, you know, where you rely on yourself for that strength, right? The strength that I'm talking about is the strength of everyday life, right? I mean, like you walk into the office, the technology doesn't work, that this doesn't work, that doesn't work, you know, the kids are getting sick, whatever it is, can you remain equanimous, right? Through that. And once that happens, then all of this reliance, right, which we perceive, it'll all transform itself and resolve itself.
Well, in that question, I mean, I don't know a lot about business in real life, but as an user of information and everything, and using the example that you said, Felipe, which I think was the person who made the comment, I think the social dilemma is because what they do with people is not honest, and that's the point, that people doesn't know that when they said something is going to be used in order to make you like a consumer of other extent. The point is that you have to be very honest with with people that you interact. And if you are very honest, I don't think that this kind of dependence is going to be created and it's going to be a problem. So I think that, again, it's a decision that you take, and you decide if you take first like the means to do something, or if you take like the value which is behind what you are pretending to do.
What do you think, Renata? What was that one? What do you think is the biggest challenge in creating a culture of ethics? What do you think?
I think that you have to be very, very, very into the change, and the change of yourself is every single day, like a commitment with yourself. And I think the main challenge is to be with that commitment all the time, and you have to reevaluate a lot of things all the time as well. Like from my professional perspective, I mean, like a teacher, I can tell you that I learned every single semester of my students, and it means that I have to evaluate my believings every single time, because sometimes I have like a dogma with a topic, and then they show me that with that dogma I am thinking the perspective of equality, of trying to not discriminate, or whatever is important in the terms we are speaking about. So you have to give yourself, I think this is the main challenge, the opportunity of reevaluate everything in order to make a culture of ethics. And it means that we have, like now with the pandemic, that we have a business here in Colombia. I'm not part of any political party, nothing like that. It's just examples in order to illustrate what we think. Like it's called Crepes and Waffles, and it's a very successful one. And in the pandemic, they don't have a takeaway before the pandemic, and it's really successful, but they have to reconstruct all the business, all the line of business, in order to make it with takeaway, because otherwise they were not going to be able to survive. And it means that they have to give the employers lots of opportunities to change also what they were doing. And I think that's the only way to survive, and that's the only way of being ethics. You have to think and rethink every single day, and you have to be very committed with the purpose of being ethical.
Can we flash the question one more time, Rosario? What is the biggest challenge when creating a culture of ethics? So, you know, my answer on this might be a little bit unconventional, I think. You know, I think that the biggest challenge is when you have, you know, people have not had enough, so to speak, right? It's kind of like, there comes a point, right, where we all, like, as individuals, right, we all have to all just kind of wake up and say, you know what, enough is enough. This lack of a culture of ethics, which is the predominant, I mean, maybe you can call me jaded, maybe I am, right? But I would call it, my 20 years in business, my observation is the predominant way of doing business is the lack of, is the lack of ethics. There's not a lot of companies, and I know, I don't want to get into a debate about that, but the point is there's huge opportunity for improvement. And that opportunity is usually availed when, from what I have seen, when people kind of hit that point of waking up and say, you know what, enough is enough. We have to change this. And here's what happens when you do that. See, operating in an ethical way and an honest way is incredibly freeing. And so when you find, especially if you have a partner that you can trust, that you're doing this with, you will find that your entire work life will completely transform. What is stressful right now, meetings with agendas and this and that and all this stuff, right, that we have made up, thinking that those are the things that are required to run a proper business. When we take all that off the table and reestablish the human connection, which has been lost, right, not just in business, but everywhere, that's the foundation of ethics, right? I mean, when we have a human connection, there's no possible way that I can mistreat Renata, right? I mean, it's impossible if we're truly connected. And so when we make that the objective, it frees you up and work becomes fun again, right? Work right now is miserable for most people.
I agree, and I would add something that I think is really, really important is that you can find different tools to be ethical every single day in very obvious or very common sense things, like never do something that you cannot face others to the eyes if you are doing this, or imagine what the newspaper said if you do something, or think about what the grandparent of your family or the great or wise person in your family would say about what you do. And if you start to think about these little things, then they came naturally, as Deb said, and there is not other way to live. It doesn't mean that Deb and I are superiors or something like that, because I don't like to think about myself on that terms. The point is that if you think really about, that what you are doing has consequences on yourself and on your family and on society, ethics start to be something that you have to live with.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about. I think there was a question was this the same? Oh, creating dependency by users on a platform. Oh. So do you want to go, or do you want me to go on that one?
Oh, go ahead, please, Deb.
Okay, so I think if I've understood this properly, I think you're asking, is it ethical or unethical for users to have a dependency, right, on social media? So this is a very interesting question. It depends. My answer is it depends on the volition of the social media business itself, right? Because here's the thing: if I were CEO of a social media business, okay, and the primary objective of my business was not money, but rather the deepest fulfillment of the people who are involved, including the users. Meaning every single decision I am making is for Renata's deepest and highest good. Not for my wallet, but for her deepest and highest good. So then what will happen is that this whole notion of dependency and codependency actually goes away, because what my entire business is about empowering her, right? So neither she is reliant on me, neither I am going to be reliant on her. So this whole reliance that has been created right now is an unhealthy reliance, because the volition of the social media business is not the highest and best good of us, the users. The volition of that business, the objective of that business is for that business's bottom line to grow. That's it. Which is why you see technology. Technology can be, it's a disease right now, many people regard, right? All these social media, right? But it can also be our cure. The problem is not the zeros and ones. The problem is the volition that's behind it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in addition, what he said, I just thought that it depends also the uses that you do with the social media. I mean, what makes it ethical or unethical is if you are having like a purpose of create a fake image of what you are doing, of what you do, or what the others do. I mean, it's in terms of honesty and integrity that I think. But and it depends, of course, of the uses that you do with social media, but it depends on what you really give and take of that.
Oh, you're on mute. We're sorry.
Mute.
I am here. No, you are not the points that you are reflecting, or the points that you were even underlining are really useful. And I just want to ask you one question. What is the biggest that you ever had in your professional career?
The biggest what dilemma?
Dilemma, yes, that you ever had in your career. I mean, what was that moment when you were in the break, like tipping point of reflecting and saying, no, I will take this road or this side. Please share with us that.
Oh, you want me to go first? Yeah.
Yes.
So mine was, I would say, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when this movement kind of came to me, right? When I woke up and saw what was going on, right, in business, because it was complete, it's the complete opposite of how everything that I've ever learned. And I'm a householder. I've got a wife and 11-year-old twins, and so I was very scared, right? It was a big dilemma for sure on what to do. But what I always tell folks is what made it so challenging, but in some ways maybe not so challenging, is once you wake up to the kinds of things that we're talking about here, right? Then there's kind of like no going back. It's impossible to go back. I always tell people it's like trying to unlearn that 4 + 3 is 7, Like once you know 4 + 3 is 7, it's over. You're never going to go back, right? And so in some ways, what am I going to do? But that dilemma was really of my own creation, right? To say, hey, like, I don't know if I can do. It's more fear, right? Of like moving in the direction that we're talking about on this panel, as opposed to, kind of any intellectual dilemma of what is 4 + 3 really 7, or sort of, no, I know it's 7, And so it's more just fear, was fear for me.
Great. And in my case, I think there is not just a moment, but when I decided that I wasn't the conventional person that I was expecting of myself. I mean, when I realized that I wasn't going to be like most of the others, things start to be easy and to be more fluent, or like in terms of yoga, more like this. I don't know how to explain this, but I always try to be like in a puzzle, like trying to be like match perfectly with what was supposed to be from me. But the day that I understand that it doesn't mean that it was good or bad, that just is my own story, my own life. That day was really the beginning of the rest of the days and the rest of my life. But it's like a path more than a moment.
Well, thank you. Thank you, both of you. I really enjoyed the conversation. I am sure that the people involved in the incubator will be in contact with you through the private network. Of course, where is open. Where can people find you? Where? Social networks, a website, please.
Yeah, I can put my email in the chat here. Maybe that's the easiest way to do it. Let's see. Chat. Actually, you know what, Rosario, I don't know. Does it let me? Can you place my email in the chat?
Also mine. You can place the one from the Universidad and the Gmail as well. This is my cousin Manuela, which is taking care of my child.
Hi.
So, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that, Rosario. It doesn't let me. Only yeah.
Okay, my internet is not that quick right now, but I'm doing it.
It has been great to be here with you.
Yeah.
It's an honor, and it has been very refreshing, even with the problems of English and pronunciation. I think that we got a good understanding of each other, so that's great.
Totally. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Rosario, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you for inviting us.
I will share the emails in the chat. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great, guys.
Great day.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Un segundo. Thank you.